welcome to the Chrissy B Show. What do you consider to be the most difficult job in the world? Is it being a soldier, a nurse, a politician perhaps? Well, I think many people would agree that being a parent tops the lot. Now, there does seem to be quite a bit of help and advice for the mums out there, but what about daddy, especially stay-at-home dads? We've titled today's show Mr. Mummy, and there will be lots of tips for the fathers who are brave enough to bring up the kiddies and stay at home. My guests tonight are Neil Sinclair, author of The Commando Dad, Tim Atkinson, a full-time stay-at-home dad and author, and Robert Ashitay, who is still trying to get used to juggling work and being a father, so he'll be getting some advice on this show as well. And if you want to get in touch at any point during the show to share your views, you can tweet Chrissy B Show or Facebook The Chrissy B Show. You can also call 020-7686-6300 if you want more information. You can also visit chrissybshow.tv. So let's just take a look at this video first to introduce our first guest.
You need to take special care and attention when making formula bottles. Today's training film will instruct you on how to make a bottle for your trooper. Guidelines vary about whether to use cold water or cooled boiled water to make formula milk. Either is fine as long as you ensure the milk is at body temperature when you give it to your baby trooper.
Alright, so now you're ready to put on your teat. Now be very careful with this, alright? Make sure you don't just go in and grab the teat at the top because they're sterile, so you need to grab them just by the side. Alright, and then you place it on and then you get your ring, retaining ring, and screw it down like that. Alright, now then before you give it a shake, you need to put the lid on. Make sure that when you look at the bottom that there isn't any formula that's still stuck to the bottom, okay? Now then, you need to check to make sure the temperature is correct. Okay, now the way we do that is by taking the lid off and then over the sink, a little bit on your wrist. That's the correct temperature. And we've got a waiting baby ready to go.
Neil.
Hello.
Hi, welcome to the show.
Thank you, thank you.
So just to quote something that you wrote on your website, now you've been a role engineer commando, PE teacher, security guard at the UK mission to the UN in New York, and a PCSO in the Metropolitan Police. But you say by far the most demanding job today is being a stay-at-home dad to your 3 children.
That's correct.
Really?
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, weren't those jobs pretty tough themselves?
They were in themselves. However, the thing is with those types of jobs is that you've had plenty of training, especially being a commando. The level of training that you get in the British forces is just fantastic. And being a commando, I was trained for whatever I was going to be faced with, going to Iraq or Belize or wherever I ended up being. So, and working with the Metropolitan Police Service as a PCSO. Again, the training was fantastic. So I was prepared for those things. Being a new dad, I had absolutely no preparation whatsoever. I'd done a lot of reading of books about pregnancy and childbirth. So I could have actually delivered my own son, you know what I mean? Because I knew I was so clued up. But then, but then moving forward, no, clueless, absolutely.
So you actually stay at home full time, do you? At the
yes,
moment?
yeah, I have done for the past 10, going on to for 11 years. Yeah.
Take us through what it was like when you brought your first baby home, Samuel, wasn't it?
Well, there's obviously the euphoria of becoming a dad for the first time, which is fantastic. And then my wife and I lived in New York at the time, and so we didn't have any relatives really. It was just myself, my wife, and a 2-day-old baby. So when we got home to our apartment, I put my son down in his little car seat, 2 days old, looking up at me, and I looked at my wife and I said, "What do we do now?" And she looked at me and said, I haven't a clue, not a clue."
Oh,
and the both of us
you wanted to go back in hospital.
We're scratching our heads thinking about what to do, and there's this, and from then on, it's just, you've got this tiny little thing which requires you for everything, absolutely everything. You know what I mean? They can't do anything for themselves other than cry. And
had other people sort of told you about how difficult it was before, or was it?
I can't really. I mean, I think they try and they try not to scare you. I think if they say if you actually knew what it was going to be like, you would never have a child. You know what I mean? You'd be like, in the opposite direction. But it was, it was a challenge. The first 6 weeks of my son Samuel's life was challenging for all of us, all three of us. Yeah.
Take us through some of those challenges. Then, what was the most difficult?
Well, I think the most difficult is every baby has their own personality. They do all the same things. They need feeding, they need changing, they need bathing, all those things. But they do have their own personality. And my first son, I was blessed with a crier. He used to cry all the time. He'd wake up in the morning and cry, and he'd literally cry until he fell asleep for his nap, and then he'd wake up and then he'd cry. And my second son, Jude, it really is. I mean, for me, it wasn't so much the volume. I mean, I'd been in places. I've been a PE teacher. I'm in the army. There's a lot of shouting in these environments, but for me, it was the pitch. There's a certain pitch that a baby can release. And
it's like when I hear them sometimes if you're in a restaurant. I was in McDonald's the other day, and like you could hear the baby crying, and all of a sudden it was silence. The parents looked at each other, and then this screech came out, and they were just waiting for it.
Definitely. And the thing is, though, the thing that I discovered, which was I was reading to my son. I used to read to him from a very early age. When he was a couple of weeks old, I started reading to him when we put him down, and he was screaming the place down, and I thought, so I put some earplugs in so I could read to him, and I was like, I stopped and like, oh my God, it was amazing. It really, really was, and it wasn't the volume. The volume you could still hear them, and it was the pitch had gone. Yeah. And the pitch, the only way I can describe it is it's like a fuse, and the pitch, it's so loud, and it's like, oh my God, I think my head's going to explode, and but putting the earplugs in. Really was fantastic, and I actually thought, right, okay, next time I need to do nighttime manoeuvres, as I call them in Commando Dad, and when he's crying and I need to give him a bottle or change his nappy or whatever, I put the earplugs in, and it was fantastic. It was like oh my God, I can't believe this, because I was able to sort him out, do what I needed to do. You know what I mean? To make him more comfortable.
But this thing that's happened that you're talking about, did that happen after you decided to apply your...
Yeah.
Tell us how you got to that decision.
Well, what happened was the first 6 weeks, if anybody offered me £1 million to redo the first 6 weeks of Samuel's life, I would laugh and say, you keep your money in your pocket. I would not do them 6 weeks again. It was horrendous. I mean, for various reasons, it was really, really hard work. And the stress and the tiredness, and I'm fortunate enough to have a partner.
Was she already working at this time?
She was on maternity leave at the time. So we were, so she was, she was with the baby, and it was all sorts, and it was horrendous, absolutely horrendous. And then 6 weeks came, and I went, right, I've had enough of this now. What can I do? What I've got no training as a dad, as a father. What have I got? And I got military training. And in the army, it's planning, it's preparing, it's having a really good idea of what's coming. It's doing things in a certain order. It's called an SOP, Standard Operating Procedure. So I said to my wife, right, we're doing this, we're getting this sorted out. Everything that we need to do is going to be regimented. But
it's such a brilliant idea, because it makes sense, doesn't
it? It made perfect sense to me, because it was, you need to do the same things over and over and over again. You need to change nappies, you need to make bottles, you need to sterilise equipment, you need to do all these things. Yeah. And having an SOP, Standard Operating Procedure, made it simpler. And once I started implementing these, so my wife was doing it as well, life got easier. It really, really did. It did get significantly easier, yeah. I'm not saying it was a walk in the park, but it really, really did make things easier, because it was... the routine started coming in, and I think one of the key things is a routine. You need to get a routine going. Not that's rigid. It needs to be flexible. You know what I mean? Yeah. So you can bend to adjust to situations as and when they come up. So
all this was the idea behind the book that you wrote. Can you talk us through that?
Well, the idea of Commando Dad didn't come at that point, really. I mean, that was just a survival tactic, really, for me and my wife, And as I say, because we were on our own, we didn't have anyone to ask, and we didn't have anyone to take up any of the slack. So it was really about me and Tara and Samuel and getting things in place. But the idea for the book came later on. My wife, we had another son about a year later. Jude was born, and then you know, we started toying with the idea. I was like, oh, you know, there needs to be a, you know, if someone had written a manual to be a dad and they'd handed it to me, that would be fantastic, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be great? And we toyed with the idea, and we keep the idea around. And then 4 years later, my wife became pregnant with my daughter Liberty, and I went out to have a look for this manual, and hoping that her dad had written it,
Didn't
and they
exist.
hadn't. And I went home to my wife and said, listen, no one's written that manual. And she just said, listen, you're going to have to write it yourself. Just do it. Just write it yourself. So I'm like, right, I blooming well will. And
Are there a lot of dads that need this kind of help then?
I think every dad needs this type of help. I think every parent needs this type of help, you know what I mean? Because I mean, there are a lot of, I was at the baby show in Birmingham a little while ago, and I was talking to a lot of dads there, but I was also talking to a lot of mums as well.
Yeah.
And as they were coming past the stand and having a look at the book, the mums were going, I could do with this as well.
Yeah.
You know, so it's been written for dads, you know, because it really is the book that I wish I'd been issued when I, you know, here's your baby and here's this book. This is a manual that's going to really help you with, you know, with being a hands-on dad from day one. And it's about, I use a term called preparation and planning prevents poor parental performance, which is a mouthful. And very difficult to say after a couple of glasses of wine, I can tell you that. But that's what it's about. And it's about being prepared before the baby's born. It's not, you know, once the baby's in your arms in the delivery room, it's, you know, you need to be prepared already.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So hence why the first chapter in the book is the advanced party.
Yeah, so you've got quite a few interesting things here. So, well, you've got how to bath your BT, that's baby trooper, right?
Baby trooper, yes, absolutely.
How to deal with crying. You've got things about the golden rules of nutrition. So you cover quite a few things.
You know what? I really tried to. It was really hard to try and I've tried to shoehorn in as many tips and information into a book that's accessible in its presentation, but also its size as well. I think if it had been presented in any other way, it would have been like an encyclopedia. And I know that you know, there is stuff in there that I would have liked to be able to put in the book.
But you do that on your forums, don't you?
On the website. Well, the forums, commanderdad.com is something that I'm phenomenally proud of the book and the way it's looked and the way it's been received. But I'm also really proud of the way that the website's being used as well. It's referred to in the book, and it's backup support for the book. And because there are things like the video you saw there about the making a bottle and stuff. To put that in a chapter, it would need a chapter. You know what I mean? To explain it through the process. And I'm a pretty average guy. I wouldn't read it. You know what I mean? I wouldn't at all. So having a video on there is one part of it. So we've got the resources section, the resources tab. You go on it, and it's got the chapters of the books, and then there's resources on there, and it's something that's going to be growing as well. As I, we try and point dads in the direction of somewhere else. I mean, if I'm not a nutritionist, I've got the chapter in there has been checked by a nutritionist, and it's and everything is good to go. But if you've got specific things that you need to do, you can post it on the forum.
Well, it's great to have this support, because a lot of parents, especially if they're on their own, if they're single parents, they really panic sometimes and they think they're on their own. But there's so much help out there for them. Like you've got like websites such as yours, books as well.
Yeah.
So there is always help. They don't have to feel that they're alone. If they've got like a question, they can always ask.
Yeah.
Actually, we've got someone coming on later on in the third part of the show who he's doing well, but he does get a bit stressed sometimes. So I know you're going to be coming on later on as well, just to give him a bit of advice. So he's going to be telling everyone the kind of problems that he goes through, the challenges that he has, and then hopefully, you'll be able to give him point him in the right direction as well for your experience. But we do have to go to a break right now.
Okay.
Time's flown again, but after the break, we'll also be talking to Tim Atkinson, who is going to be sharing some of his wisdom for the daddies out there as well. So join us after this break. Welcome back to the Chrissy B Show, where we're speaking about stay-at-home dads and the challenges that they face. Let's look at this next video now to introduce our next guest, Tim Atkinson.
Bringing up Charlie, a full-time job and an award-winning blog. Tim has been sharing his experiences of being a stay-at-home dad for the past 2 years.
There's a good book. Do you want me to get you a tomato as well?
And his favourite food it's roasted frost and old frost berries on the ground.
Charlie's mum has been at work while Tim has been writing and winning 2 awards for his observations on the challenges and triumphs of full-time fatherhood.
So, Tim, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Oh, another stay-at-home dad. So how did that come about and what were you doing before that?
I was a teacher, and I'd been a teacher for, longer than I care to remember, really. But I'd gone into teaching because I liked the work in the classroom. I enjoyed the interaction with the children, and I'd done a few jobs before on a temporary basis, and I knew that an office job wasn't sort of the kind of thing I was going to spend my life doing until I retired. But unfortunately, it's like most things, if you're good at something, you get promoted, and in my case, I got promoted out of the job that I enjoyed into an office where 60% of my time, you know, I was dealing with a stack of government paperwork. So at about the time that Charlie was born, my wife had also got promotion. She's a teacher and was very keen to go back full time. I was at the stage where I was at a bit of a career plateau, and if I hadn't taken a step back and become a stay-at-home dad, I would have looked for a career change at that point in my life in any case. So it just happened to sort of mesh together very well.
Weren't you a bit like, oh, what will people think? You know, a male staying at home looking after kiddies. What did you think of that?
Yeah, well, I kind of was and I wasn't. I had a bit of experience with my daughter Sally, who's 14, but obviously there was a bit of an age difference there. So, but I knew some of the kind of childhood rituals and some of the... I'd been a bit of a hands-on dad, and I tried to get as involved as I possibly could, without having the benefit of Neil's manual, of course, but it had been something that I enjoyed, and I was actually looking forward to the chance to do it full-time and not to miss out on some of those sort of early infancy milestones. You know, Sally had a great start at the nursery she went to. We both got on with our careers at the same time, and by the time she was ready for school, she was socialised and you know, integrated very well. So I don't regret that in any way, but by the same token, she celebrated her birthdays in the nursery with the nursery staff, blowing out the candles on her cake. She took her first steps in front of the nursery teachers rather than at home with us. And so there was a little tinge of regret. There was a little tinge of, I don't know, a sense that I'd missed out on something that I didn't want to miss out on again with Charlie. So I was actually quite looking forward to it. I was keen to embrace it.
Okay then. So what would you say were the main challenges for you staying at home and looking after Charlie, first of all?
It's a challenge regardless of the sex of the parent. It's a challenge, I think, for a stay-at-home mum, and it's a particular challenge for a stay-at-home dad because, of course, there aren't that many of us, although, in fact, there are a growing number these days.
So I was saying to you earlier, because I thought, I had this perception in my mind that, you know, maybe men would cope a bit better because they're not as emotional in some cases as women can be, or, you know, maybe don't get as stressed, or maybe they don't show that they get as stressed. So I thought maybe men would maybe deal with it a bit better.
To be honest, I'm not sure it makes a big difference. I think there are good parents and bad parents, and I don't think it matters whether those parents are mums or dads. And there are some mums, I'm not including my own partner in this by any means, but there are some mums who are quite happy to sort of take a step back and hand over some of those day-to-day sort of parenting duties to their male partner. I think the problems come with society's expectation. When I started just over 3 years ago, nearly 4 years ago, I was literally the only man going to what in many cases is still called the mother and toddler group. So
they need to change that, don't they?
Well, they do. They need to change the name for a start.
We needed to change the name of this show as well because, you know, I got a bit told off about that. We called it Mr. Mummy. So that was a good move, right?
I mean, those kind of things are changing because there are now more stay-at-home dads. Whether that's by choice or not is a moot point. I think there are an awful lot of people who have had no choice through redundancy or career change. They've had to take on the role, and in some cases it's perhaps been reluctantly. But
men are seeing how hard it really is now, aren't they?
It's certainly true.
Women a bit
I can
more.
certainly echo what Neil says. I mean, it's the hardest job I've ever done. It really is, bar none. But it's also the most. I mean, the pay is rubbish as well. But it's also the most rewarding. I mean, there are experiences that happen on a day-to-day basis, tiny things, inconsequential things that wouldn't really mean too much to anybody else. But the magic of the moment is there, and if you're there to take part in it and observe it and sort of mentally record it. It's fantastic. It's a privilege, it really is.
Yeah. Normally when you see like a couple that's just had a baby, you tend to kind of ask mummy, you know, how are you? How are you coping? Is everything okay? Do you need anything? And it's like the dad's a bit sidelined, isn't he? What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, he can be. And of course, there's a very good reason for asking the mum all those kind of questions. I mean, she's gone through, you know, probably one of the most traumatic physical experiences any woman can ever go through. So there are very good reasons for asking a mum that. But after those first few days and weeks have elapsed, a dad has every reason to get involved and to make the most of that time, as a mum does. You know, dads should be taking their share of the nighttime feeds if at all possible. They certainly should be changing 50% of the nappies at the very least, you know.
I don't think my dad ever changed my sister's
I don't think my dad did either. No, it's
but
a
he was there all the
generational
time because both my parents worked from home, so they both looked after us. But I remember my dad taking me to school later on, and so he did those kind of things. But my mum did more the sort of work, the manual work.
But what I mean is, physically, we're not that different. Okay, there are certain things like giving birth, like breastfeeding, that men can't do. But apart from that, I mean, our stress responses, hormonal levels rise in men. Neil was talking about crying babies. Male hormones rise in response to the sign of any child in distress, any baby crying, whether it's their own or not. And they don't respond in a particularly measurable way. They, you know, dad might sort of put it down to a bit of irritation and do what Neil did and stick the earplugs in and whatever else. But it's a physical response, and we're sort of emotionally and physically geared up to be parents, every bit as much as mums are.
Okay, so how did the blog come about? Because that's quite popular, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It really came about a bit by accident. I mean, I suppose, to go back to your question about the essential difference between men and women, this is probably the crux of the matter, because whereas a mum, my wife, you know, as a good example, would sit down with a book, they've got a crying baby or they've got a problem with a child, what do? She sits down, you know, my wife had a stack of baby books by the bedside before Charlie was born, and she'd read and marked every one of them. There were post-it notes to sort of indicate where she needed to look if such an occasion should arise, and so on and so forth. What I did, I suppose, is what all blokes would do. When I was at home, when she'd gone to work, there I am, holding the baby, literally. I Googled it. You know, I put a question into Google and inadvertently stumbled upon an enormous sort of network of what was then mummy bloggers, and it still is largely mummy bloggers. But I enjoyed what I was reading, and it was a bit like sort of Neil's forum. There were questions and answers, there were posts about people who'd gone through similar kind of things. There was an opportunity to leave a comment and get a response.
It's just so nice to know that other people are going through the same thing and they're facing the same challenge, because if you think it's only you, you start to feel like a failure.
Exactly.
But everyone goes through these initial...
But as a result of sort of coming across these sort of you know, myriad blogs and enjoying what what I was reading, I thought, well, I'll have a go myself. Yeah. And the rest of the day kind of is history. Well. Yeah.
And when did the book come about?
Well, the book came about kind of as a result of that, but it also has a bit of a personal twist as well, because when Sally, my eldest daughter, was born, I was given a book by a colleague of mine at school, and it was called Dad's Baby, and it was a very battered paperback book. But it was a bit like the manual that Neil was describing, in that it was very simple, very straightforward. There were no gimmicks, there were no jokes. It wasn't an attempt to be sort of lad's humour, you know. It was straightforward. You're a dad. Here's your baby. This is what you need to know, and here's what you need to do.
You need to have a laugh, don't you, to get through some of the stresses.
Exactly. 10 years later, though, I'd forgotten a lot of that. I'd not given the book back because I'd been expressly told not to. You know, the guy who'd given it to me said, look, I was given it by, you know, such a person, and he, you know, had it given by somebody else. And it was like a baton being handed down through the generations to different dads. And so I'd long ago lost track of it. Couldn't find it on Amazon, discovered it was out of print. And to cut a long story short, decided to write the book myself, sort of rewrite it. So the book that I've written is sort of a replacement for the book that I lost.
So you cover things from even planning a family here,
through
the pregnancy, the birth.
It takes the whole thing through from you know, beginning, because I think you've got to think about what you're doing before you even do anything about it. You have to be prepared, and you have to go into it with your eyes open. And actually starting a family isn't as straightforward as it is for some people. There are problems, and they're all dealt with in the book as well, and there are solutions, and they're all covered. And of course, once the baby days have gone, Charlie's about to start school in September, and so the book kind of takes you into the first 2 or 3 years of school life as well. So it really is sort of from pre-birth to sort of age 5.
Now, our fathers, well, I suppose it depends on who they are, but I would think that maybe fathers or stay-at-home dads would be maybe stricter than the mums. What's your particular type of parenting?
Gosh, Well, $64,000 question, that, isn't it, really? I think we're pretty even. We're both teachers, so we've both had some training in dealing with individuals. But I don't think it's a question of being one, you know, we don't play nice cop, nasty cop. My wife might let a few things go that I might pick up on, but then again, I think that's...
My dad never used to let things go.
Well, I know, but I think that's partly because I'm around all day, you know, so I can't let Charlie sort of play bongo drums with the tin pack cans in the kitchen, because it would just drive me demented, whereas she's only there for a couple of hours, so she can let things like that go, perhaps. Yeah. But I don't think it's that. I mean, all children are different. My three are completely different, and you have to respond to them in different ways. You have to have very firm outer boundaries, and there have to be certain things that are non-negotiable, but within that, they have to be set miles and miles apart. And within that, I think all kids need a great deal of freedom to express themselves and to, you know, learn creatively. Make their own mistakes. Yeah,
if there's a stay-at-home dad watching now and they're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm really not coping well, if you had to give them like a couple of your top tips, what would you say to them?
Well, the first would be stick it out. Stick it out, because it's fantastic. It really is. I'm passionate that I think more dads should do it. And the dads that I meet and talk to often start by saying things like, well, goodness, I could never do it. I've not got the patience. I've not got this. I've not got that. I've not got the wherewithal. But by the end of a conversation, by the end of a very short conversation, they're often saying things like, I wish I could do what you're doing, or I wish I could spend more time with my own children. So the first thing, and probably the second thing, and probably the third thing, is just stick it out. There is a way through, but there are no tailor-made solutions. I mean, if there are problems, get help. There's plenty of help online. Talk to people, read books. Okay,
so the main thing is, like, basically don't keep it to yourself as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
There's no shame in saying, look, I need a bit of help.
I think there is that with parenting. I mean, especially sort of in Britain and in the USA, you know, where we all have to be the perfect parents, and there's no such thing. You know, we all make mistakes, and the point is we learn from them and we get better as a result. Yeah. At least that's what should happen.
Okay. So Tim, as I was telling you earlier, we are going to have a stay-at-home dad coming on after the break that we're about to go to. So he is having a bit of trouble. I think he's doing quite well, because he's got a lot on, but, you know, maybe you could have a chat with him and see how you and Neil can help him as well. Sure. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, so we're looking forward to that. So if you want more information, if you want to get in touch as well, if you have a question at all, you can give us a call on 020 7686 6300. And just to let you know, everything that you see here is also on our website. We put the previous shows up there, so you can take a look there. If you do miss something, you can visit chrissybshow.tv. Everything is there. If you want to Facebook us as well, it's the Chrissy B Show, and also you can tweet at Chrissy B Show. We're going to go to a quick break and then come back with Robert Ashite, who's going to be speaking to us about some of the challenges that he's having at the moment, and also, you know, hopefully we'll be able to give him some advice. So join us after this break. Welcome back to the Chrissy B Show, where I have three wonderful fathers sitting here with me. Two of them we've spoken to already, and now joining us as well, we have Robert. Hi, Robert.
Good evening.
Welcome to the show. So you're a father.
Yeah.
How old's your daughter you have, right?
My daughter, yes. I have one daughter. She's 3 years old.
Okay, and I know it's quite difficult. So tell me, did you actually expect it to be as hard as it is?
Yeah, it is a challenge, and I had no idea actually of the kind of challenges that I would face, like doing this role as a semi-stay-at-home dad, if you know what I mean. Basically, we had our daughter, and it was like one of the greatest experiences of my life. And one of the things that I always said within myself is that when I have my child, you know, I'm going to really try my best to be in their life. So even when, you know, in the hospital, you know, I was, you know, making sure I was there doing my part. Antenatal, child comes out.
Sorry.
You know,
I love the terminology.
Yeah, I tell you.
It pops out.
But, you know, and what I believe it was Neil was saying about you automatically have that like protective instincts for the child. You know, like every time I would always wake up to see if she, you know, how she's doing, if she's okay, you know, and then afterwards I really was involved, even though I was working at that early stage. I was really involved in the changing the nappy. Me and my wife agreed within ourselves to like take turns, you know. Sometimes she just wouldn't wake up, and I'd be like nudging her, like, it's your turn. But she'd just lie there. So I'm like, okay, let's do this. And then it came to a point in my career where I always aspired to have my own business. And if I was to
What
wait,
was your job before?
I was involved in video production. So I was involved in that for 10 years, radio production and television. So I got a lot of experience in that. So I felt that, you know, the time I had in that equipped me to go it alone. Challenges were, it was a time of credit crunch, you know, because it was like only just about a year ago. It was a year ago. But I said, no, I'm going to go for it because we can't wait. So I have a child. My wife's working. She does a job. She gets paid pretty well. But I chose to take on the challenge, you know. And when I went for it, obviously I got to work concerning my business. But then obviously...
That was quite a brave thing to do with a young child, because most people say, oh, maybe I should just wait, carry on in my job for a while.
It's true.
It's quite a brave thing to do.
I know. I mean, because the thing is, because I aspire for big things, and when you aspire for big things, you have to face the challenges. You know what I mean? And so with my daughter now, she was going nursery at that time. You know, like nursery, and it's like, okay, one of the cutbacks we had to make, seeing as I'm at home, the child can stay with me. And
did you know what you were letting yourself in for?
That's the problem right there.
Because you're not just looking after her, you're actually working as well.
Exactly.
So how do you cope with that? Or how do you not cope?
I mean, because she was 2 years old when I went from employment to take the way of self-employment. She was 2 years old, and you know, one of the things, because she was already very active, you know. And one of the things I found is because it's creative work, some video production, creativity. You need to think, you need to meditate, you need to sit down and work on your productions and things like that. So the time I found to do that properly, because during the daytime she'd be there. If I tried to work, like put Dora the Explorer on, you know, let her watch that for a while.
So I've heard of that, but they all watch it, obviously, because I don't know. Yeah,
Dora the Explorer. No, Dora the Explorer.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's like that. So, you know, but the thing is, you want to spend time with her as well. You know, there are times when it's like, I have to focus on this work because I have a deadline. And there's times where you try to do things with her, you know, alphabet, numbers, so she keeps up with the pace, you know. Take her to the park, you know, and there's times when the child just doesn't let you concentrate. You can try to, you can sit there and do the work, you know, that you're trying to do, but they're always,
How did the two of you cope with that?
Oh, badly, really badly. I mean, I can so recognise what you've just said. I mean, I in the course of writing the book, I mean, my book is divided into tiny short paragraphs, and people think it's by design, and people say, oh, that's a really good idea. And it's nothing to do with that at all. It's to do with the fact that the laptop had to be positioned on the back of the sofa, and I had to write a paragraph in between doing all the things that you've just been talking about. You've just got to fit it together somehow. But I mean, that's a terrifically brave decision to start a new business. And then to, you know, when I did it, I wasn't even thinking about writing a book for a year, 2 years, sort of, and it took me that long to establish a routine and to feel comfortable about what I was doing. But you've taken on both those roles simultaneously.
Yes, exactly.
You deserve a medal.
The thing is for me, is like I started my own business, but I became a childminder. So, you know what I mean? It was like, it's nothing.
Fit the two in one.
So, for me, you know, I don't know how, I think it's fantastically brave because, you know, for me, when you know, when my daughter was 2 and I had another little girl and a little boy to look after, you know, that was my time. That was what I was doing, you know what I mean? And to try and do something like yourself and write a book and also look after a child, I think you guys are both fantastic. You really are, man. Absolutely. You got Bando Dad's respect. I tell you what. Absolutely. Yeah, mate. You get a medal, mate. Absolutely.
But
so one problem is, one challenge for you is the concentration on your work. So how do you deal with that?
What I found, the best time for you to have peace and quiet, to concentrate, to create, is during the night. So I would find myself like, so I'd do a power nap from 10 to 11. 10 to 11 power nap.
Do you know power naps? You must do all the time.
Essential.
It's probably, you probably got it in your book. I've got it in my book. The power nap is just...
Do they really work? I think I need to
They are fantastic.
How long do you...
20 minutes.
20 minutes.
20 minutes.
Ideally with a bit of caffeine before. So that's just kicking in when you're waking up in 20 minutes.
What I found what I found was if any longer than 20 minutes,
you feel sluggish.
You feel sluggish. So 20 minutes. I set my alarm for for 20 minutes, because if anything longer and you're like, oh,
So
it's
you,
really
how
difficult,
long
but
do
you
do
wake
that
up
for?
and
Well, I mean, I would do the power nap, say, for an hour and a half.
That's not
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, no, serious, no,
That's a night's sleep, mate. Yeah, sometimes.
But check this out. So what would happen? I wake up like 12 o'clock, and at 12 o'clock, wife's asleep, child's asleep, and I'd work through the whole night, creating to about, say, 5, 6 o'clock. So then when I'd finish the production, I'm happy with it. Okay, I've seen this, the sun's already coming up. So, set myself, wind down, sleep, eventually sleep. I'm out of it. My wife is getting up to work.
And she gets up and does...
She gets up. Well, the child's still asleep at this time.
Okay.
So she gets up. I'm just getting into the sweetness of the sleep. You know when the sleep starts to feel good?
Yeah.
And it's actually doing something for you. Then who wakes up at 9?
9. That's quite good though, isn't it? So, yeah. But I mean, what you're describing is what kind of everyone's got to do and fit a routine. I mean, when I gave up work, my wife's a teacher, demanding job. So one of the things that we agreed I was going to do was to run the house so that she could come home from school at 5:30 and have 2 good quality. So she's doing the bath time sort of routine and putting them to bed and reading them the bedtime story. So I found those kind of 2-3 hours quite good to do, or even just to crash out on the sofa actually sometimes. But it's about sort of fitting some sort of domestic routine that works best for both of you, isn't it?
And I think as you said, like to build up a routine. But the things with this kind of work is that so like she's jumping up. Daddy, you okay? Daddy. Okay, 9 o'clock. But over time, that was pretty good. That was because she has a routine. She wakes up at 9. She's good for that. She'll sleep like a good time. She won't wake up in the night to cry or anything. She's never done that. But she would wake up. But then afterwards, she would see our daddy sleeping. So she'd sit down next to me quietly. Wait for let daddy have his little few moments of sleep.
That's brilliant.
Yeah,
She does that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, then she would say, Daddy, I want breakfast. So that's about 10. That's when she can't wait anymore. And so then after I get up, I know the drill, and I work it out. But then the next thing comes when, for example, you have meetings. Because you have meetings with people. I have my business advisor. I have meetings with clients, we have to arrange things. So obviously I've got this child to take care of. So luckily, fortunately, I have family that's close by. So when I plan the meeting, which we usually try to be in the morning, I have to arrange things so I can have her somewhere in the morning. And and when her uncle's like, he's there sleeping in bed and we're ringing on the bell like, take the child, it can bring a little conflict, to the final appointment I need to attend. So, I kind of work my way around it, using family. If I didn't have close family around me, it'd be very, very difficult,
Okay. What would you say the main issues are that maybe Tim and Neil could give you a bit of advice on? What do you think? Do you have any questions for them?
The main issues, I was thinking, because like obviously she's 3 now, so I've already gone past the stages of milk and nappy changing, which wasn't really a big problem. But I think it could be a thing of, I think managing her time.
Yeah.
I think
what do you describe a different? So she's having breakfast at 10. Are you then sort of hands on with her until mum comes home in the evening?
I mean, so like,
every minute of the day.
Does she still nap, by the way?
Yes, she does.
Does she nap?
Sometimes she does. It depends how active she is. So she's a resistant one. This one, so she can be there like 3 o'clock nap time. She's just there.
Yeah.
So you trade that for the full night's sleep.
That's right. Exactly. And she's up for it like. But I think that's it. Just I need to establish her time. That's when we went to Spain and we had a really good time and everything. But obviously, when you come back home, it's tricky. It's tricky to actually help to educate her because we used to go to those like classes where they have these things where kids go and they read storybooks to them, which was really good. It was a really good routine. Yeah. But I couldn't stick to that routine.
No. I think there's a danger with parents when you get to that level, that stage of infancy, that you think you've got to be with them all the time, reading to them, doing something, teaching them something, or even just narrating, giving them a commentary on what it is they're doing. I think it is quite important. It's difficult, but it's quite important, I feel anyway, to stand back, and just observe or even read a book.
How much time should you be spending then with
Well, it should be about 50-50, but I think there's a danger. I take Charlie and Eloise to the park, and there are people who won't let their children go anywhere
No,
without being
yeah.
absolutely micromanaged.
Behind
They
them.
micromanage
Yeah,
every
absolutely,
second of their
yeah.
experience, and I think that's a dangerous extreme, because you want a child who can cope with boredom for a start. You want a child who can show some initiative and be creative, and you
Yeah.
can't teach those things by doing them and leading them by the hand. They've got to be given the freedom to discover those kind of things for themselves within themselves.
Have you got any? Have you had a look around your area for groups like play groups, but also as well? I used to have a group in Wednesbury where I used to be a childminder, but there was a dads group which was fantastic, and maybe to do a little bit of searching around on the internet to see if there's groups. No, I mean like. Mine was specifically for dads. You know what I mean? It was dads and male carers to come, and that was great to think, because I mean, you found it yourself that you were many times when you go to a child a play group, you are the only dad.
Yeah.
As you say, it's changing now. It is changing, but having a dad's play group is really, really good.
I'm lucky as well. I mean, there is one in the town where I live as well. So I would think if they reach rural South Lincolnshire, there's got to be one.
Really do have a look, because it's and because you get your dad perspective on it. You know what I mean? And sometimes it can be a little bit alienating or a little bit scary for a dad going into a busy play group where there's 20, 30 mums.
Because actually, I went to one of those. Because they used to have it on Wednesdays. I'm not even about alienating. Yeah. Definitely, because I was there. I had Kaya there, and the rest of his mums.
Yeah.
The rest of his mums.
But I mean, the thing is, it goes back to the question that you were asking me earlier. We've got to realise as dads, it can be as alienating for the mums. You read some of the blog posts about toddler groups, and the politics of where you sit and who you talk to and when you are spoken to. All this kind of thing.
Just a question about
it's as bad for the mums as it is for the dads, if not worse.
The mums as well. Do your wives' partners agree with the way your parenting skills? Is that
yes, it's got to be, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think,
how do you make a compromise?
I think when one of the things that you were saying to him about the use, you mentioned about discipline and being strict and stuff, and I think you've got to be on the same page when it comes to parenting. You know what I mean? You've got your certain way of doing things. You know what I mean? As a mum and as a dad. But fundamentally, you've got to be on the same page. You know what I mean? Because that can cause a bit of friction.
Because that'll make things a lot easier if at least you do agree on the
I think
because that's already a big hassle.
It can be. I mean, I remember having a conversation with a dad at the playgroup a few weeks ago, and he was saying, "You're lucky because your wife." Clearly, from what I was saying about me and my wife, we agree with the way that we bring up our children. He went, whereas me and my wife don't agree. And he went, and it's a hard thing. It does create a lot of friction.
Sorry, Robert, we have run out of time. Unfortunately, I want to talk more, but maybe that is actually the first step before anything else is to actually sit down, even if you don't have any children yet, but you're planning to have kids, at least find out beforehand what your parenting methods will be, because that's going to be a big headache out the way. Because if you start having children and you haven't agreed on how you're going to bring them up or who's going to stay at home to look after them, you can end up it could be a very stressful situation, couldn't it?
Definitely.
But thankfully you've all got that under control. You all agreed with your partner and everything.
Yes,
so
you work out life's a great teacher.
Exactly.
And like you said, stick to it.
Learn from your mistakes as well.
And you're not alone.
You're not alone.
Shall I sing now?
I can back you up.
None of them. Yes, okay. So it's true, you're not alone. So if you are a stay-at-home mum or dad, so you can hear everyone has difficulties, everyone goes through the challenges. Just because you're having trouble, it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It's just a normal part of parenting, because it doesn't come with you don't just know everything automatically. It's a learning process as well. Gentlemen, thank you so much for sharing your advice.
Pleasure.
And your life stories as well. And we'll be back again on Wednesday. So Wednesday's show is all about memory. So if you find yourself forgetting things all the time, we're going to be having someone coming on who's a memory expert, and he's going to be teaching us how we can actually improve our memory and actually remember things as well. So that's going to be on Wednesday's show. So that's all we've got time for today. So thank you to my guests and thank you to you for watching, and let's leave you with this YouTube funny video.
Да, мне похеру. Oh, God! I just shot myself.